G'day and welcome back. Today I've got a Bush radio. It's from about 1936. I've got very little information on this. On Radio Museum there's some that look similar to this, but this one's got a little secret. I haven't found a model number yet, so maybe when I pull it apart I'll find one. It has this crop circle design in the centre. It should be just material there. That someone's added that later on. It doesn't even fit. It also has a big chunk out of here, so hopefully the owner will just let me take it off and throw it in the rubbish. These were made in England by Bush. There's the little Bush logo there. I don't know why they didn't write Bush underneath it, but I guess it's self-explanatory. Now the knobs here are all different, and one's missing of course, so I have no idea what it should have on there. That's probably volume. That'll be tuning. That's not working. Tone maybe. And this is a... Oh, it goes all the way around. That's probably the wave switch, I guess. The dial's interesting on this. It has a light behind it, and as you tune, it highlights the numbers here. I'm not sure what it does actually. I'll be interested to see how that works, but it has a light inside a drum with a slot in it, and it should go around and highlight the various frequencies. The frequencies here go from 200 to 550. That'll be in meters, so that's your broadcast band. This one goes somewhere from 900 to, I think it says 2000 up there. So that's long wave. I would have thought it was short wave, but it's actually a long wave set. Well, let me spin it around. We'll have a look in the back and I'll show you what its little secret is. Well, here's the back, and look at the size of the speaker. What's that, 10 inches at least? I can see holes through there, so it's going to need some work. I think it used to be brown. It looks like rust, but it might be just brown paint with a bit of rust on it. There's 3 valves missing here. I do have them there on the side here. I just took them out so I could read their numbers. I've plugged the numbers into Radio Museum, and that gives you all the radios that use that set of valves. Unfortunately, none came up, so I don't think this is in Radio Museum. The little secret is that this is a battery set. When I pointed that out to the owner when he sent me photos, he said, "Oh, I didn't know." so now I've got that problem as well. So I'm going to have to come up with some sort of power supply. This uses a 144 volt battery, so I'm going to have to come up with that and a 2 volt filament battery, I believe. It's got 3 tuning gangs. That makes sense. If it's a battery set, it'll need the extra range if it's probably to be used outside the city areas. I think I'll take it out of the case and we'll see what's underneath.
When you're buying a vitamin product, read the label. Make sure you get all the vitamins recommended by government experts. You do in Vim's.
I've turned it on its side to take the screws out, and it's got this disc on the bottom, and I don't know what it is. It's tin. I thought maybe it's an aerial or something. Why would you put the aerial on the bottom and it wouldn't be in tin? But I think it's a carousel. Hey, look, it moves a bit. It's on a carousel. You can turn it around.
And 3 essential minerals also. Get Vim's at your druggist. VI for vitamins, MS for minerals. Vim's.
That last screw was hard to get out. It's been rusted. I think there's been mice in this thing. If you have a look over here, this looks like a pencil sitting in there. Anyway, pull it out. Yeah, look at that. Get the case out of the way. Alright. It doesn't look so bad in here. It's had something living in here. There's mice been making a nest or something. But they don't seem to have chewed a lot of wire or anything, so not too bad. There's a capacitor there that's been replaced, and that's very modern. Down the bottom here, it looks like a bank of capacitors, I think, in a container. All right, let me get rid of all this stuff. I'll get rid of the cabinet. I'll take the speaker out and go and clean this out a bit. It's covered in something wet. Get rid of all the mice droppings or whatever it is. Just clean it up a bit before I handle it. I'll be back in a minute. I took this out to the backyard. I brushed it all off. I ran the compressed air out there and blew it away. I put a mask on. So it's clean now. I sprayed it with Glen 20, which is like a Lysol, I suppose. So it now smells lemon fresh, and hopefully a lot of the bacteria that might have been growing there is gone. I think the first thing I'll do is take this dial off. I don't want it damaged. There's the little light globe inside the tuning drum. There's another one on the other side as well. And as you rotate the tuning drum, it shines through the light there and highlights the dial. So that's going to be interesting to see. I'm looking forward to that. The next thing I'm going to protect is these bulbs, because I have no idea what size they are. So if they're still working, I'll keep them. I think that says 2 volts, 0.3 amps, which is okay because I actually have those. So these are 0.25 volts, 0.3 amps. So they probably do on a pinch. Now, of course, there's nothing to say that's the original bulb specification. Now, the radio is super heterodyne, and these are the 2 IF transformers. It has a nut and a screw in the center. This one's kind of rusted. I'll have to see what I can do there. But I think you adjust one coil with the nut and one with the screw. And we looked at the tuner before. There's a little tin box up here. It's probably got capacitors in it. I would think it's probably for the supply, and it's probably not so much a filter, but more a like a backup or like a reserve, I suppose, so that if it's any surges, it'll absorb it, or if there's a supply requirement quickly, it'll have a bit of power in there to supplement the battery for a second or two. I'll spin it again and we'll have a look around the side there. I've just put the air conditioner on, so there might be a bit of background noise. Here's a row of resistors, and there's some mica caps and another yellow cap that someone's replaced recently. So servicing wise, very easy to get to. I've turned it on its side. There's the coils there. There'll be antenna and oscillator coils in there. Here's the bank of capacitors mounted on the back of the resistors we just looked at. If this is going to be a going concern, I'll have to replace all these. So it's going to be interesting. I have to try and get this apart, put new resistors inside and put it back together. This is the band switch along here. And as you turn it, there's little flats on here that operate these switches. I've seen this set up before, but not quite laid out like this, and certainly not in a radio. On the bottom of these 2 cans here, I can see there's little screws, so I assume they're padder adjusters. That's enough sightseeing for today. I'll see if I can work out how to get some power on it. Now, I've been busy. I have used this old radio chassis here. I'm using its transformer and capacitors to smooth and all that. I actually changed the capacitors. Got a little bleed down resistor in there, stuff like that. So that's going to supply 144 volts using the Variac. I've also connected up the speaker again. The voice coil's rubbing, but it should make some noise if we get that far. I've also downloaded a spec sheet for it, and it's got the circuit. It's a BP5 here. I don't know this is the right one because it's got different valves, but that doesn't mean this radio has got the correct valves. Maybe the valves in here are correct. But it looks the same. It's the same layout. Everything's exactly the same. Just, like I said, a couple of different valves. I've also printed the layout of the valves, the pinouts on the base. So I should be able to put some power on and just check what voltages I've got where. I'll use the power supply on the side of the solder station here. That'll give me 1 amp, and I can adjust the voltage. So I'll actually turn that on. Now, I've set it to 2, so we'll see. It's still on 2. Okay. Now I'll put this on. 126 volts gave me 144. So we'll see what we get. 143, 142, whatever. Yeah, so that's pretty good. I've got my voltmeter here, and I'm going to have a look at this PM22A. The voltages are still pretty good. 146 we got now, and 2 volts. So I'll put it on the anode here. 147 volts. That sounds perfect. I'll just try the filament here. 2 volts we should have. Yeah, 2 volts. Now the screen is the center one, I think. I think it's that one. So that should have something around the same, 146, that's right. I'll plug the valve in, we'll see what happens. There we go. I have the filament power on. 2 volts, okay. Alright, put power back on. So I'll see if I can induce any noise. Oh yeah, there we go. That's working. I've got my signal generator here. I'll see if I can... Oh, there it goes. Okay. Alright, well, that one's working. I'm buoyed by the fact that this output valve worked. So I'm going to move on to the detector. This is an L21DD. I've mounted the chassis in the frame so I can get to the sockets on the bottom. I'll just show you where we are. That's the output valve there. This is the detector socket down here, if you can see it. And this is the RF stage here, so it works its way down that way, and then over here. Now, this capacitor here, which is hard to see, is the coupling capacitor. Now, I've zoomed in a bit closer. It's supposed to be a 0.03, so what I thought I'll do is just measure the output from here, make sure we're not stressing that output valve. Now, I have measured that, and it's 0.04 at least. It's probably heading to 0.05, so it's no good. It's probably paper. It looks like a mica, but I guess it's paper. Right, I'll put some power on. I'll turn the 2 volts on. I'll put some power on. It's dropped the voltage a bit because I've got the meter on the grid. I'll just keep going. So this will be the plate. That's got 86, that's right. These 2 pins are the filament. Let's see if I can get on there. And we got 2 volts. Okay. I'm going to turn that off. I'll put the valve in. Okay, there it goes. Okay, I got the 2 volts back on and the power on. So the grid's still maintaining a minus, not very much, but it is. Alright, I'll just do a finger test. It's working. I think having this on the grid is pulling down the voltage too much, so I'm going to take it off and we'll try again. There we go. Alright, I'll put my finger on it again. Look at that. Yeah. Okay. I'm amazed that this worked at all, but I'm pretty confident, so I'm going to measure the voltages on the next 3 sockets here. I'll put the valves in, and then I'll come back and we'll turn it on with all the valves in. I won't bore you watching me measure voltages. I checked all the voltages, they were good, and I put the valves in and put the little caps on the top. Something to be aware of, and it's on this VP2, the cap on the top of the valve is in fact the plate. So there's 100 and something volts sitting on that. If you do the finger test on that one, you'll get a bit of a whack from it. I'll put the 2 volts back on. Alright, let's put some power on. Yes, it's working. Turn it down. I think it's just picking up dirt there. Now, it might be on shortwave, long wave. I'll turn it off for a second. I need to clean the shorts out of this tuner here. But there's a way of telling if it's on shortwave or not, is these globes change side. But I'm not sure how you get the globe to come on. Now I cleared the short on this capacitor, it had a little plate bent sideways a bit, so I've cleared that. I've also put a globe in here. This is the long wave side. So if it's on long wave, this globe should come on. And to make it come on, you push the volume control, I think. So it's not coming on. So I'll switch this over. There it is. Alright, so that must be medium wave or broadcast. So I'll see if I can tune anything in now. Yeah, the scratching's gone. There's nothing there. Oop. There's something there. There should be things down this end. There's an antenna around the corner here with this green wire on it. It doesn't seem to be doing anything. If I touch it, it's not changing. But there's also these 3 here. Now these are for putting a frame antenna on, which should be in the case. This doesn't have one. I don't know if it was ever there. But they're not doing anything. No, that's changing. Alright, we'll try that.
And 89.16 are now double vaccinated. We expect those figures to come up a bit this afternoon. In good news, our 5 to 11-year-olds, 25.72% are now vaccinated. That's 123,000.
That'll be the ABC station, I think. So that's pretty powerful. That's coming through. That's the next one. That's 4KQ. Alright, so it works to some degree. A lot of noise in there. That'll be all the capacitors. Now that I know it's working, I will take it out to the workshop and give it a clean up. I want to remove the rust off the chassis here. I'll clean up the IF transformers and the tuning capacitors, things like that. And once I've cleaned all the rust off, I'll give it a coat of clear lacquer to protect it, stop it rusting again. But I want to leave it reasonably natural. I don't want it too shiny. So I'll head off to the workshop. I'm out in the garage again. I haven't been out here for a while, but the doctor says I'm okay to come out and do a bit of heavy work. So what I'm going to do is try and clean the rust off here. As I said before, I'm not going to try and, paint it or something like that. I'll just get the rust off and leave it. I might put a clear coat over it and we'll see how that goes. I've removed the tuner assembly. It's just a big plate with 4 screws. It has rubber, there's one there. It has rubber grommets in there that are no longer rubber. They're quite hard. So I'm going to replace those. So I thought I might as well take it off anyway. The 2 IF cans here and the caps for the valves, I'll try and clean that off as well. I don't want to polish them. I just want them looking natural. Now, hopefully I can poke these wires through. I've got a product here, what's it called, Action Gel. It's supposed to be a gel, but it's pretty thin. It'll be phosphoric acid, I assume. So, it's working. I'll keep going with this. It says to leave it for about 30 minutes. So I'll come back and we'll have a look. It doesn't say anything about not getting it on aluminium, so I'm not sure if I can get it on these cans or not. This has been at least half an hour. I'll just go up the top here and wipe it off. I've got a wet rag. Yeah. Well, it cleans it up nicely where there's no rust. Yeah, that's really not coming off. The instructions say to use a brush or a scourer and then reapply. See how it goes. So I'll finish. I'll get all this off here. I'll try and scour it up and I'll come back when I've finished. I started to clean this off and this is rust here and it's raised. It's quite heavy. So I've used a brush here and it seems to get it off. This is what it said on the instructions to do. So it's coming off. Now that's very pitted and it's got a lot of rust in there. But if I do that around there and apply another go with the rust converter, yeah, it might come up all right. I've finished this now and it's come up fantastic. I just kept putting on the rust remover and just using a little brush to work it in, and eventually it's pretty much gone. So I'm going to put a clear coat on here. There's rust inhibiting clear coats you can get, and I want to get a matte. I've got gloss. I don't want to put gloss on it. So I think that'll look good. The IF cans I'm going to take off. There's 2 nuts on the top and I think there's 2 screws underneath, and that should just lift off. I've got to replace this wire anyway, so I'll take them off and clean them. Right, here's the tuner, and that used to be mounted on this plate. I've taken all that off and I've taken the little drums off as well. I've put a bit of rust remover on here. I'll just see what it does. That's the front. You won't be able to see it. If that cleans up all right, I'll do the whole thing. I've got to try and clean this up. This is very dirty. These are pretty good. They're black inside. I think that'll just clean out, and I'll probably just polish the outside. I don't know what it's made of, but it's a nice unit. Everything on here is nice. All the screws are good quality. The fittings, the materials are nice and thick. It's really good. I'll take one of these IF cans off. I'll take this one off. We'll have a look inside. So I took that screw out on the bottom, but I don't think you need to. I think this little nuts hold on the top. Yeah, just simply lifts off. I'll take this one off as well. I've got to cut the wire, that's all. But I'll take them off and give them a clean. I finished it all. Everything's come up pretty good. The capacitor came up well. I was worried about that, but that cleaned up okay. There's a little bit of rust here I've got to get rid of. I'm just giving that another coat. But everything else turned out all right. I said I wasn't going to polish those, and look at them. They're like new. I've done the valve caps, and yeah, everything's looking good. I think I'll take it inside and I can start doing some of the electrical work. Alright, I've got it inside and I'm going to start on the electrics. There's a fair bit to do. I'm like a mozzie at a nudist camp. I don't know where to start. I've got this row of resistors to test. There's this bank of capacitors here that I have to pull these apart and replace all the caps in there. There's another capacitor here. This is on the power supply in, so that has to be taken apart. And there's various capacitors here too. There's one sitting there. There's a couple there that are probably micas. This grid capacitor I looked at yesterday and I said, oh, it might be paper. I misread it. I thought it said 003 microfarad. In fact, it's got 3 zeros in front of the 3, so it's 0003, which makes it 300 picofarad. When I tested it in circuit, so maybe it's okay. I think I'll start with this capacitor first, and what I learn here I can apply to this one when I do this one. And now I've got a screwdriver on one side, there's two nuts holding a phenolic terminal strip on there. I'll get that off. I've got the capacitor out, and I've just got it on my capacitor tester here. It's supposed to be 2 microfarad. It's reading 2.2, and I've got the mega there. We'll see if we can charge it up and see what it looks like. Okay, 250 volts. It's rated at 250 AC. Let's try it. It's hanging in there. Okay. Doesn't look bad. Yeah. So 85 years, it's still working. Now I could leave this in the set and probably keep working. It is leaking around the seal here. This one's dry, this one's leaking, but I'll change it. Something to watch with these capacitors is that in the early days they used to use polychlorinated biphenyl, and that's PCB. So you don't want to get that on you. It's a carcinogen, so you need to keep clear of it. Our club holds little workshops every 3 months or so, and we've got a gentleman that does presentations for us. But he was saying that you can do a little field test with a flame and you should not see any green. If it's got PCBs in it, it'll be green. Now I don't want to do a flame test because obviously you're burning the oil, so I'll keep away from that. But there is another water test I saw on the internet, so I'm going to try that. I do have some oil here that leaked out, and I'll get that together, and I've got a little glass of water here. Now the test is if this floats, it doesn't contain PCB. There we go. So seeing that's floating, I'm going to do the flame test just for fun, and I'll do that out on the barbecue. Peter, our learned instructor at the club, said to get these open, put them on a hot plate, like a fry pan sort of thing, and just let them sit there, and then the solder around here will melt. It's also got solder up one edge there, there it is there, and the top soldered in. So I'm thinking what I might do is melt the solder on the top here and hopefully be able to push it all the way out. I'm out at the barbecue, so I'm just going to do that flame test before I try and melt the solder. I'll get a bit of the oil. Oh, there's lots there. I'll see if we get a green flame off this. Oops. It's on fire. There's no, it's a yellow flame. Alright. I've got an old pan here we don't use anymore, so I'll put it on there. We'll see what happens. Oh, there's the solder's melting, or it's leaking at least. And there comes the oil. Doesn't seem to be melting the solder. Alright, I'm getting a lot of oil out of this now. It's been a couple of minutes on there. Is it going to come off? No. Damn. Alright, back you go. Alright, let's try it over here. I've had to bend that slightly, just the solder's melted. There it goes. There it goes. Oh, wow. So I bent that. Anyway, I'll be able to repair that. That's made a mess of my pan. I'll have to wipe it out before I cook my sausages for dinner. Alright, I'll see if I can get this out. I'm pretty disappointed the way that all went. It didn't go anywhere near like I thought it would. But anyway. Right, there we go. Now I want to keep these terminals intact, so I'll just clean them up so I can get them through whatever's left of that rubber, and I'll panel beat that. I'll strip it back from the paint and give it another coat of paint when I've glued it all back together. I've cleaned the tin up and I've panel beat it along that edge there, so they'll sit down alright and solder up okay. Now what I did was silly, what I was doing before, and trying to remove this end would have come off easily. So what I did was take it out in my workshop. I just hit it with a little blowtorch and that just fell off. And the reason I didn't do that in the first place is I didn't want to heat this rubber up, but it's so petrified. I don't think anything could possibly damage it. Anyway, so what I did was silly. I'm a bit smarter now. Now here's the capacitor that's got to go in, so I'm going to put that in there, but I want to keep these tabs so it looks original on the outside. So what I'm going to do, I think, is I'll glue these in first. I'll put some JB Weld in there or something to hold those, and then I'll insert this and solder it in. I don't think the JB Weld will mind being heated up. I've done it before on valves and things, so it seems to be okay. So I'll glue all this together, let it dry overnight, and then I can assemble the case again. It's the next morning. The JB Weld is hardened and I've mounted the capacitor. I've just got to solder it in. I'm going to attempt to solder this lid on, and I've just put a bit of Baker's soldering flux around the edge there. That's worked pretty well. I'll clean that up and that'll be fine. I've flipped it over and I'll just do the same on the base here. I'm only going to solder here. I'll leave the sides unsoldered so there's an air gap. Once again, that's come up pretty well, so I'm going to take it outside in a minute and give it a coat of paint, and that's done. Well, there it is. It's all done. It's come up really nice. It's as good as it was when I started, so I'm happy with that. So I've got this one over here to do now. As we saw before, this one's mounted on the back of this resistor board. I'll number these along here, these wires, and I'll just unsolder all these little wires here. That means I'll be able to check all these resistors because they won't have a connection at one end. There we go. So I've numbered all those now, and I've numbered the wires. I can't possibly make a mistake. These ones here are pretty obvious. They just run to each terminal there, so I don't think I'll make a mistake there. So I'll spend 10 minutes and try and solder suck these wires off and uncurl them if I can. I'll come back and we'll work out how to get it out of there. I've got all those off. These are too hard to get off. They've been wrapped around too much. I'll just cut them up, put new ones in. Now to get this off, there's a screw through the panel there and there's a nut on the back. Now I've just unsoldered this capacitor, it's in the way. There's the screw. Okay. So I should be able to pull this out. There's probably something on the bottom. No, there it goes. Well, there it is. Came out pretty easily, really. It's got 10 capacitors along the top here. It says here 10 by 0.1 UF and 400 volts DC working. So yeah, I should be able to do that. I've got 10 capacitors. Trying to work out how to get it apart, and I'm not sure. I think this bottom plate is one piece and it goes up the back here, and I think this top piece comes down here, but I'm not sure. I'm going to paint strip it first, and then I'll be able to see where all the solders are. I'm not going to put it in my fry pan. I've given up on that idea. It might work on this one actually, because that would sit on the pan and just melt the solder around there and you'd lift it off. I'll see how that goes. I've paint stripped it. I just used a bit of acetone and just brushed it off. It just fell off. Now what I think is this is a plate on the bottom here, and I believe this will just come off and leave this top part. So with that in mind, I think I will put it back in the pan, and we'll see if it just floats off. There'll be oil everywhere, but it should just come off. All right, I've got the pan on. It's warm. I'll put that in there. Now the pan's got a bit of a dip in it, so it's not all sitting down, which is a nuisance. There's some signs of oil coming out here. I'll just push it up out of the dip a little bit. That's the reason we don't use the pan. It's uneven on the bottom. There it goes. Easy. It's cooled down a bit. We'll see how they've made this thing. It goes around there. There they are. Just a little rolled up capacitor. Well, this should be easy enough. I'll just fit my new ones in here. There must be a wire on the bottom there connecting all these together. I think there is. There it is there. Yeah, okay. I finished cleaning all this out inside here. I removed all the bits of wire and the wire going through into the terminals here. I need to re-establish the hole so I can get my new capacitors in. So what I'm going to do is drill them out. I'm not going to try and heat them up and suck them out or something. It'll just get too hot for this rubber here. I'll try using my Dremel. Yep, that'll be fine. So I'll do the rest of these and just be a matter of soldering these in there. There it is, all done. I've put the 10 capacitors in. I ran a bus line along the back here and just connected onto there, and then just poked through here and connected the other in there. So it's pretty easy. The bus bar or bus line is soldered on each end, and I put a bit of fish paper here just to make sure it didn't short, but there's no chance there. It could, oh I don't know, 2 or 3 mil above the surface. So the only other thing to do now is to put the back on and give it a coat of paint, and that'll also be done. I wasn't going to show this, but I've soldered it up, and I was wondering how I was going to mask up these terminals. So what I've done is got some heat shrink and pushed it down and shrunk it on. Now this is the type that has the adhesive inside, so they've glued themselves on. So I'll put a bit of masking tape on there to finish it, and then I'll go and paint it. Now, as I said before, after I've taken these capacitors out, these resistors aren't going anywhere, so I can test them all. They all seem to be very similar. They're all 1 meg. That's what, 10k, 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 100k, 10k, 10k. That looks like a red, so that'll be, I think that's orange. 20k. I think that's 50k. It's probably black on the bottom. I see a bit of black there and I can't see the dot. These ones are all bussed together on the bottom. I've got my probe in there. This one's 20, what is it, 20? That's coming out 24. This one's 200. Sorry, it's 100. 127. This one should be 100, or 10 I mean. This one should be 100k. 119. So they're all around about the same amount out. These three are bussed together. I'll see what they are. 1 meg, that's pretty good. They're 1 meg resistors. 1.1. Whoa, that one's high. It's 1.5 meg. Most of these resistors are over 20%, so I'm just going to change them all. They're easy enough to change, just cut them out and put new ones in. I've replaced all the resistors, they've come up pretty good. I replaced this mica cap here that was out of spec. This one needs to be soldered in. I need it out to access the screw behind there. Looking down on the chassis, I need to replace these resistors as well. I measured them out of spec. There's a capacitor there. I need to pull the leg off and just see if that's okay. I took the aluminium cans off the antenna and the oscillator coil so I could change some of these wires. They're rubber wires. To take the can off, I had to remove the volume control so I could slip it past. These wires here are rubber and they've got a fabric over the top, so they're not doing too bad. There's a yellow one under here you can just see. There seems to be some sort of plastic and that's just fallen apart, so I've got to replace that one. These ones here, I'll probably determine how hard it is. If they're not disturbed, they're going to be okay. These rubber wires here have deteriorated. These are for the volume control and it runs up here onto the volume control. I'm not sure that that's not a shield in under that fabric sheath, so I'll pull this out and I'll see what it's made of inside. There's the wire and it's got an earth coming out one end and not the other, so this must have some sort of shield in it. Let us see if they've waxed it or I can find the start of it. I'll cut this off. It's pretty weak actually. Got most of it off. Not quite what I'd hoped inside. Well, it's just wound in there. It's not soldered. I'm weighing up what to do here. The wire inside here is fine. It's protected. It has a cloth wrapping around it as well, so even if the rubber did fall apart, it's still okay inside. I ended up putting heat shrink on here. I did have ideas of using insulation off some retro looking wire, but I just couldn't do it because I couldn't get the wire through. So I'll just wrap this around here. I'm going to dab a little solder on that, then I'll put some heat shrink on. Well, it's not fantastic, but I did manage to keep the shielding, and I kept the original cloth covering, so yeah, a bit modern on the end there. I'll do the other end, and then I can put it back in the radio. I reinstalled that volume control cable, and it looks pretty good. I'm happy with that. This yellow wire here goes off to the tuning capacitor on top of the deck. It's probably rubber. It's almost a plastic look, but anyway, it's falling apart. So I need to get off for this, the solder point there. I can just barely get my soldering iron on there. Okay. I just realised this is the wire coming out here. It's there, if you can see, it's yellow, and it comes up to the grid cap here. So I'll have to try and get that off. I think I'll just cut it off. Just see if I can solder this back on now. That looks alright. That's a good solder. That's alright. I've just put that wire through. But what's happening is I'm taking everything off, but I'm not putting anything back on. So I'm going to end up a bit confused. What I will do, I think, is go outside, scour this off again, and give it a coat of clear. And then I can start actually reinstalling stuff as I go along. I'll go and do that and come back and we'll see how it came out. I let this dry overnight and it's come up really nice. It's got a clear coat on it, but you wouldn't know it. It just looks like a natural metal. So it's kept its patina and it's protected from deteriorating. I used a can of Rust-Oleum clear satin, so it looks good. I'll reinstall all the components in the bottom first, then I can turn it over, sit on its base, and I'll finish the top off. I've already done a bit of work. I replaced all these resistors, the capacitors. I've put the switch back in, or the volume control, and I put the two cans on the two aerial coil and the oscillator coils. The first thing I'll do is put this capacitor pack back in. I painted it and it's come up pretty good. So I can mount that back in. So I'll just tighten the nuts up and that'll be secure. I cleaned off some of the paint so that I get a good ground on these terminals here. Alright, that's fitted okay. I need to now go and connect these wires up again, and I need to run wires from here to the resistor block at the back here. So once again, let me finish that off. I'll come back and we'll have a look. Alright, that capacitor's soldered in and I'm just working on the other one. I've fitted that other capacitor I did and I'm just putting the nuts and washers back on. And that's about it. I'm not going to worry about these wires. I'm going to replace these eventually. So there's little clamps to hold the wires there. So I'll do that later. The tone pot in here had been replaced, and it was the wrong value, and it was open circuit anyway. So I've put another one in. It's not authentic, unfortunately. I think I'm pretty much done under here. I've got to solder this on here, this wire, and that capacitor around the back has to be put back on. So I'll do those two. I'll flip it over, and I'll start doing the top. I need to rebuild the sled that goes on here. It's got the capacitor and the little tuning drums. I need to also pass some wires up here. I thought I'd finish the bottom, but of course I've got to replace these. I have been working on this one. I cut it short when I wanted to remove the can here, and I probably shouldn't have done that. But anyway, I've extended it again and picked up the ground for the shield. This is what the grid caps look like on the inside. This little tag there, and there's an earth tag there, and then a rubber grommet. Got one ready to go. I've removed the wire and I put a new rubber grommet in it, and it's ready to get soldered back on. I got the wire in there, and I've loaded it with solder, so I'll just try and solder it onto the little cap there. There it is. I'll try and solder this earth wire on as well. I think that'll work alright. The only problem is I forgot to put the cap back on the transformer. So I'll undo the solders here, put the cap back on, solder it up, we'll come back and have a look. Alright, that's the yellow wire I put through yesterday. That's what's left of the old one, so it wasn't much good. There's also a ground wire that goes up with the yellow wire, and they were tied together like that, and then they had a sleeve around them. So I've pulled out the old wire and I've run a drill through here back and forth, just trying to get out the old melted rubber. So it's pretty clear now, still getting a bit of rubber in there, but that's pretty good. I've put a grommet in there and I've made up a new black fly lead there, or ground lead, and those two are going to go together. So if I can get these wires through here, they seem to be going. Believe it or not, this is how it goes. This of course goes up to the top of the valve. So I'll have to get underneath, put a nut on, I'll put the cap on the same way as I did the other one, and I'll finish the rest of them up here. I'll come back when they're all done. I've finished all that. These wires need to go onto the tuning capacitor. These are for the lights in the dial drums there. I'll put this plate back on now, and that's got the tuner mounted on top. I've already mounted the drum on it, and I've mounted the tuning capacitor. I think before I mount it back on the radio, I'll attack the dial string. I don't have a diagram of how the string went, but I think I can work it out. I think with this screw vertical, that's the screw that holds the string, and the capacitor closed, I think it should be about right. I spent a few minutes just sort of working this out in my head. I think that goes about there. And a bit of tape if it's going to stick, which it doesn't seem to want to. And I can pass the string under there. And I'll put a bit more tape on because this string's going to fall off. It's sticking for some reason. And then around this pulley. And then around here. I've lost the little screw that was there a second ago. There it is. So if I can hook it in there, like that, it goes around there. I'll put a little tape there as well. Doesn't seem to be sticking to this pulley. Okay. And underneath, and up here I think. I'll tie the string around here. It doesn't have a little hook to hook it onto, but this is how it was when I got it, so I'll just repeat it. Alright, I'll see if this works. I'll get this tape off. There's another bit further around, I think. We'll get to that in a second. I think that's working. I think that's going to work all right. I'll leave the extra bit of string on in case I need to undo it, but I'll mount it on the chassis and we should be able to test it out. I've put the 4 screws in to mount this tuning capacitor plate. I've put grommets underneath to replace the old ones. So really this is just a matter of putting the nuts and washers back on. The last one there had a little earth jumper, so it goes from the capacitor to this plate and then down on this screw here, so I'll have to take that screw out again. I've replaced all the wire here, so that's finished, and I've refitted all these wires here, even the light bulb down the back there. All I need to do now is put in the valves and set up the power supply, and we'll see if it still works. Alright, I've got it all set up. I've got my power supply set up again. I've put the frames back on because I've got the valves in, so I don't want to damage them. If I break one of those off, I think it's the end of the story. So I'll supply the main power. I haven't got the 2 volts on yet, so we'll put that on. I've got 135 there. Oh, that's not right, 114. Yeah, that should have been 140 odd. So there's a short somewhere. I'll just try it again. Why? Yeah, 114. No, it went from 150 down to 114. All right, so something's wrong. Give me a minute. I will go and check everything I've done again. I just spent 20 minutes looking over everything. I'll see what I can find. I spent another half an hour going over everything I did, and I can't see any mistakes as far as wiring is concerned. So I'm going to divide the radio into parts and determine which area's got the fault. Here's the HT rail coming in here, and it has resistors that are on that resistor block, and they go off to power the various areas. Now I found that if I put my finger on this one, on the grid on this one, the speaker buzzes, so I can be fairly confident that that area is okay. So my idea is to lift these resistors in turn and find out when the voltage comes back to normal. So I'm going to start here. This is R11. I'll start there, then I'll do the next ones. I've applied a bit of tape along this edge here and I've put the resistor numbers on so I know which one's which. R11 was the one I was interested in, this one. Alright, that's off. I'll see what happens now. It's 154. That's what it should be. Okay. So this is R11 and it's going through one of the transformers to the plate of valve 3. Alright, I'll have a look at that. So that's valve 3 there, and the only work I've done in this area is this lead. I wonder if it's developed a short. I checked it after I soldered it all together, it was okay, but it did flop around a lot while I was working on it, so maybe it's developed a short. I've changed the multimeter to continuity and it's a dead short. Look, yeah, there's, okay, that's what it is. I'll replace that wire and we'll try again. I made up a new wire and it's all connected up, ready to go. So we'll test it again. So hoping to get 150 something up there. 154, okay. If I put the 2 volts on, it should start working. Oh, that does work. I'll check if we're on medium wave. Is the globe? Yeah. So that's medium wave. See if it'll tune anything in. It's working, got a fair bit of hum in there, and that might be my power supply. The main problem now is it's missing this antenna circuit. These 3 dots here, these little circles, are these items on the chassis. This whole frame aerial here is missing. I've just recently found this drawing here. This is the frame aerial, and it's mounted on the rear cover on the radio, but the cover's missing on my radio, so is the aerial. There's the 3 little wonder plugs there. L1 here is the medium wave. This will be long wave, L2. I can try and make a new one. Not necessarily make a new one, but I can substitute it with a loop stick antenna. So I'm going to try this and see if we can get it to work. I've connected the loop stick into where the old frame antenna went, and I've put my external aerial on there. It's got a little secondary coil here to induce a signal. I'll put my 2 volts on. I'll put the power on. There it goes. We'll see if that'll check out there.
Consistent in tone, and that tends towards a kind of naturalism, which works, but
so when you're in the supermarket, or when I'm in the supermarket, we might be there with our kids or with a range of people, and they're exposed to a form of marketing.
So it's still got a fair buzz at the back. I'm just going to go straight to ground with this because it's not working. I'll just knock the power. Hang on. So I've reconnected that wire. I was going to say I'll put it on ground. That'll bypass the grounding circuit that's in the radio.
We need to think through, because we definitely don't want parents picking up those products and then giving them to kids, for example.
It could also be a bit titillating for children. I mean,
Ash gave up tennis, started to play cricket and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Apparently 6 years ago, school students at Graceville could actually book a private tennis lesson with Ash Barty. This is 6 years ago.
okay.
$16.50.
planet we have, and more than 9,000 species are yet to be discovered. Dr. Jing Zhang.
Person 40.
Yeah, well, I mean, I play a lot of breaking in the horses, and I've had quite a few backs, but I guess I don't look at it the wrong way.
Doesn't sound very clear.
I did before.
Therefore, complicit in and ordered and approved of the audit under cross-examination from Robert Smith's barrister.
I felt win the Australian Open and thought, I'm going to get back to this. So,
He would have been going, that should be me, it should be me.
this is according to his personal trainer, by the way. And when Medvedev was 2 sets up and serving for the game, he must have been thinking,
It sounds a bit strange. It's got a very wide range of tuning as well. An alignment might help get rid of that. I've got the radio down to about 600 kilohertz. I'll see if this makes a difference. Usually at the end it'll change.
And it really is just, practicing people's
particularly at a time when we're doing it really tough?
Yeah, the existing measures that are in place around alcohol advertising, and this is advertising.
Yeah, it just doesn't seem sharp. I can't get that nice warm spot. It's a bit raspy or something, or whatever you'd call it. So maybe I will try and do an alignment, particularly these IFs, to try and narrow that band. I'll have to go and read up on how to align this thing. There's so many little adjustments all over it. The IFs are easy enough. There's the two there. The IF frequency on this is 123, and I've set the generator up to that. I also have the analog meter set up as well. The IF adjustments are capacitor. They're not adjusting the inductance. So there's a screw there and a nut there. That does the primary and secondary. I'm going to turn the volume up. Unfortunately, you'll hear the signal generator. So I'll start here. Pretty close. Okay. And I'll use the nut runner to do the other ones. That one was about right. Okay, I'll redo those a couple of times. I'll come back and we'll do the next step. The next step requires the scale back on, so I'll put that on. I've put the dial on. I've got to mesh the capacitor fully, so it's nearly there now, so it's right down. And there's a screw here. Now if I push the button, oh, there's the light there. It says to line it up with this 550 mark here, Budapest. So I can move that. The screw's loose. Okay, so I should be able to nip that up there. I'll just check it's still there. 550 is right on. The instructions say to set the generator at 1200, which I've got it on. It says to go to 250 on here on this scale. I'll hold the light switch down and rotate the capacitor. Yeah, look at that cute. We're looking for 250, there it is. I'll turn the volume up, I'll see if I can find the signal. There's no, it's not far out. Alright. I'll put that back on 250. To adjust it, there's three little capacitors here. This one's the oscillator, that'll be the antenna, this will be the RF. So I'll turn it up again, I'll see if we can find it. Okay, I'll use this little nut runner. I'll wind it all the way in and then come out. Not doing much. That's not really what I thought would happen. Alright, I'll go to where it peaked. About there. Now this one's the RF, I'll just wind that in. It's having some effect. And I'll just wind it out just till it peaks. That's about it, I think. Alright, I'll call that done. The next step is to close the capacitor and go up to about 600 kilohertz, which I think is 500, isn't it? There. Yeah, I've got the just signal generator on 600 now. Now this is the front of the radio, it's the wave change switch. The nut here is for long wave, and this center screw is for medium wave. So I'll just turn it up. And I'll see if I can peak it. Wrong way. Looks like it's peaked. It was already there. Alright, I'll leave that alone. And that's it. That's the alignment. I'll just see if it works. I'll check it. There's the 500 meter mark. On the next station, I'll turn it up a bit. Next station is 612. There it is. It should be about there somewhere.
You're about to hear 5 clues. The clues this afternoon are coming from Justin and...
Now the other ones, I don't know what they are in meters, but I'll...
Could be love and empathy and care. Head for the leader with Boris snug away. She says thanks.
Alright, that'll do. I'll probably have to do a lot of that again. I've got to make up a new loop stick and I've got to get a power supply. So when it's all set up, I'll do a quick check again, make sure everything's okay. But this video's gone long enough, so I'll do all that next week. Once again, a bit of an unusual radio and quite daunting for me. And it's not often you get to barbecue parts of your radio. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed watching this and I hope you can join me next week for my next radio adventure.